Okay, it's been about 6.5 years. I guess it's time to finally tell my story. It pains me that me and the orange man have something in common, and that is that yes, I did look at the solar eclipse 6.5 years ago. I didn't realize or just didn't get the glasses, and I thought it wasn't gonna be a big deal. And I closed my right eye and I stared at the sun for a good like 15 seconds. Didn't think anything of it, not an issue. The very next day I woke up and I woke up on my, I think my, what is my right side? And I opened up my left eye to read on my phone and I couldn't read every other word. There was like a blind spot on every other word that I was reading. And I was like, okay, that's weird. Maybe I haven't like woken up. So I woke up, walked around the house. I couldn't see things. Like I couldn't see, and it was like a direct, you know what I mean? And I said, oh my God, nah. And I researched it, the solar retinopathy. I said, nah. Started driving to the eye doctor and couldn't see the signs. Like this all happened in a span, like 10 seconds, only 10 seconds that I stared at the sun. And a couple months went by, I moved to New York, and I finally learned through just some regular testing at the eye doctor that there is no damage that was done to my cornea. We've done all of it, but there was some damage that was done to something, maybe some of the cells, I don't know, girl, in which certain parts of my eyes distorted. So I actually now have slow 20/20 vision. I have slow 20/20 vision because I stared at the solar eclipse without the glasses for 10 seconds 6.5 years ago. So don't be like me.
I tell you guys this story of how I almost got trafficked recently. Okay, I'm just like really embarrassed to tell this story because you guys are gonna think I'm really stupid. Like you're going to judge me so hard. Okay, so what happened was I was in Trader Joe's and I went to go buy chicken, literally just chicken. I was in the chicken section and this girl comes up to me and she's like, oh my God, your hair color is beautiful. And I had just gotten it done too. So like my hair was popping a little, you know? So I was like, oh my God, thank you. I just got it dyed. And she's like, where do you get your hair dyed? I used to dye my hair that same exact color and I stopped dyeing it ever since I had my son. But my son is actually a natural ginger, blah, 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 blah. And she started showing me pictures of her 1-year-old son. She was showing me pictures of her son and then like her husband, and she was like showing me her whole life, and she just like seemed really genuine. Okay, she seemed really nice and genuine. Like I was like, oh my gosh, she's so cute. We were having a really good conversation. We talked for 20 minutes in the store, literally 20 minutes next to the chicken. And then she started asking me what I do. And she's like, I'm a CPA, I'm an accountant. She's an accountant. And then she's like, do you live around the area? And I was actually staying at my sister's house, watching her house for a week. So basically I was alone for a week because my sister was in Turkey. So maybe like I felt lonely. And this was like the first connection I had in a while. Okay, just context, okay? She's like, I'm really enjoying our conversation. Would you like to get coffee sometime? And I was like, yeah, I am so down. Hi, I'm an idiot. Hi. Okay. So I gave her my number and she's like, okay, I'll text you after. Like, how does Thursday sound? And it was a Tuesday. So I was like, yeah, like Thursday's good. Like I'm in the area. Just let me know, like, just text me. She texted me like an hour after I left and I gave her a coffee shop name that's right by my sister's house. And then she's like, okay, like I'll see you then. Is 10:30 sound good? And I was like, yeah, that's perfect. Okay. Now, so I actually started thinking I wanted to cancel on her because in the moment I just wanted to be nice and like be like, yeah, sure, okay. So I was like, I'm not actually gonna go get coffee with her. Like I really didn't think I was gonna go get coffee with her, okay? But then I completely forgot to text her, and then Thursday came and she texted me at 10 a.m. She's like, hey, I'm heading over to the spot right now. And I literally just woke up too, and I was like, oh shoot, like I forgot to cancel on her. And then I felt bad, like she's going there and I can't cancel last minute, like I have to go. I had to go. So I go and I find her and we were talking for like an hour just about our lives. And of course I overshared. Like, of course, I told her literally everything about my life. Like she knows everything. I literally realized after that she just kept asking me questions. And in the moment, I didn't really think anything of it. Like I was just like, nah, 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 nah. I'm like an idiot. I'm an idiot. And then she started telling me about this like new business thing that she's been doing with her friend, and her friend who's like 25, retired at 23, and she's like this multi-millionaire and she's making all this money, and like she's helping her on the side and she's also making all this money. And I was like, oh, okay, that's really cool. And then she had a briefcase, by the way, which in the beginning I was like, why does she come with a briefcase? And I asked her, I was like, oh, are you going to work after? She's like, yeah, I am going to work. But when we were texting and we agreed on 10:30, she said she was free all day. So it's like, are you really going to work? At this point, I started questioning everything. So she pulls out this piece of paper and this pen, and she's like, because I asked her, what's this thing that you're talking about? And she started like drawing like random stuff. She's like, so this is all the stores that benefit and make money off of us, and we don't get anything in return except for the products. Like she started like listing off like Walmart, like Costco, like all these like big stores, and I'm just like, okay, yeah. She was writing down the most obvious things like ROI equals money, question mark, like weird stuff, and I'm just like, does this girl think I'm an idiot? Which, yeah, she probably did, because she got me there. So at this point, you guys, I was like, okay, this is a scam. Like, I'm getting scammed right now. So I started questioning her. I was like, oh, that's crazy. So what's the business called? Like, what's the company called? Because she was like talking about how it's like a big like deal now that they do, and they're making multi-millions of dollars. She's like, oh, there's not really a name for the company. It's just kind of something that she like developed and she started. There's not really a name for it. And I'm like, okay. I was also kind of getting freaked out at this point, so I started just going along with everything and agreeing and like being really interested, so like she didn't kill me. She's like, we do these meetings with all the new people that we recruit. You should really come to one. I think you would love it. She's like, you're lucky. We actually have one coming up on Tuesday night at 9 p.m. And we make him so late because people work and we want them to have time to like get there. I was like, okay, 9 p.m. Okay. I was like, oh, Tuesday night, I actually don't think I can make it. I have something. She starts going on her phone and she's like, you know what? You were lucky. We have one on Monday night too. I was like, oh my gosh, that is actually perfect. Yes, that will work. And then she's like, oh, also, it's going to be at a house because they don't like to rent out conferences. It costs too much money and it's like kind of a hassle. But it's like also like if this is like a multi-million-dollar thing, you guys can't rent out a conference. Like you're doing it in a house. That's so sketchy. I was just like, yeah, no, yeah, that makes sense. That's good. And then this is where I was like, oh shoot, this is like a sex trafficking thing. It has to be, like it has to be. She's like, all the newcomers and all the new recruits have to come dressed in ball gowns and in black tie attire. She's like, so the women have to come in ball gowns. I was like, oh, ball gown. Oh, okay. She's like, yeah, do you have any ball gowns? And I think by Monday night, you can probably buy one by Monday night. I was like, oh no, I'm pretty sure I have something. And then she's like, if getting there is a problem, we also offer to pick you up. I was like, oh, for sure. Yeah, no, for sure. I just said that I have no problem with driving. I was like, oh, no worry. Like, I can get there. Like, no problem. She's like, no, really, let me know if you need a ride because we can easily just pick you up. Oh, also, I forgot to add, during when she was talking, I was like, oh, you know what? I think my sister would be really interested in this because I wanted to see if they wanted me to come alone or like if I was okay to bring somebody. I was like, I think my sister would be really interested in this. Can I bring her? And she was like, I'll have to get back to you about that. I don't think that might be possible. It's really limited. And I was like, oh, for sure. I really hope my mom doesn't watch this video because she's going to kill me and never let me leave the house again. Also, she was like, let me walk you to your car. And I was like, oh, you know what? My brother is actually coming. He's meeting me. He wants coffee. So I'm going to wait for him. She's like, oh, okay. It was so good meeting you. You guys, I actually felt hurt after. Like, I actually thought like somebody wanted to be my friend. And I swear, I usually have a good radar. Like, I'm not that naive. I don't do things like this. She was good. She was good. I still can't believe it. I can't believe it. I was really sad after that. I was just like, I really thought we like had a connection. Like, I thought we had a connection. Anyway, I blocked her after, and then I cried. I already know that was really stupid of me. Like, I still can't believe I fell for it. How did I fall for it?
I lived at home until I was 29. I'm 36 now. And this is the tantrum that finally gave me the courage to leave. Now, mind you, the goalpost as to when I could finally move out was constantly moved. For example, I wasn't allowed to move out for college because my parents didn't have any money. And then when I actually had money as a nurse, then it was, oh, you can't move out. Your dad doesn't have stable employment. You need to stay to help us with rent. But as I made more money as a nurse and as I became more independent, they became extra controlling and abusive. And my dad would force me to let him do my taxes so he can keep tabs on how much I'm making. Anyway, so one weekend I decide to go on a 2-night trip to San Diego. And I just go with one of my friends. This is just a routine trip from LA to San Diego, because we both had friends over there that we wanted to visit. But on the drive back home to my parents, I feel this very eerie silence. I hadn't really heard anything from my parents. It's that kind of silence where you know something's waiting for you when you get home. I returned home on a Sunday night at 9 p.m. and my mom is drilling me with questions. Why didn't you send photos of your trip? How are we supposed to know you weren't lying about where you said you were? How do we know you weren't out drinking? And mind you, I've never had a sip of alcohol in my life. So I stopped my mom. I said, I'm a grown woman. I don't owe you photos of where I am all the time. She said, you're not a grown woman. You're just a girl. And I said, I bet you don't say that when rent is due. Anyway, my mom gets so angry, she takes a wooden chair and she throws it at me. And for once, I do not credit my dad for this, but he stood up for me and said, why are you talking to our daughter like this? And then my mom goes into a narcissistic rage. She starts hitting herself because how dare my dad ever try to defend me? She starts hitting herself, threatens that she's going to call the police and tell them that I'm abusing her. I still can't fully describe what I felt in that moment, but all I saw was the chains come off of me. I could no longer see them as people that I have to keep sacrificing myself for. They make their way upstairs. Luckily, I still had my bags packed. I haven't even really taken off my shoes. I take my keys. I exit very quietly. I run to my car and I call up my friend. I said, hey, I need your sofa. My mom just got violent. At this time, it's 11 o'clock on a Sunday night. I get to her house. My mom starts calling me incessantly. I don't answer, but she starts leaving very rabid voicemails. She was saying things like, if you don't come home right now, I will show up at your work and I will make sure you get fired because you need to learn that you are nothing without me. I am the reason you have any money. I am the reason you have a job. And I will make sure that you understand I have the power to take that away anytime. And that's just a brief synopsis of what she was saying. I would play these voicemails to my therapist later, and she cried. And honestly, I have a lot of stuff blocked out. All I knew in that moment was that I had to act and protect my job. Because at this time, I was 2 months away from finishing my NP. I could not lose my only source of income. So I had to call my job. I had to call the night shift nurse and tell her that I think my mom might be having a psychotic break and she's making threats to show up at my job, so please blacklist her. And these are night shift nurses, okay? I felt humiliated that I had to even say this to them because I know they were going to gossip. But I went to work the next day. I barely slept. None of the nurses asked anything. My manager asked if I was okay and she let me go home early. In retrospect, I probably should have called out sick. But when something like that happens, you really try to hold on to whatever sense of normalcy and schedule you have. As soon as I came back to my friend's apartment, I crashed for the next 12 hours. I didn't have time to process. My friend just helped me start looking for apartments. I've been no contact 5 years, and that situation was not even the final breaking point that would lead to our estrangement. After that, I had stayed at my friend's house for a week. And I found an affordable apartment, but it wouldn't be ready for another month. And I still had a lot of things I needed from my parents' house because, mind you, when I escaped, all I had was a duffel bag. So I did return home, but I made sure to always have some clothes ready in my trunk. And because my parents had no emotional maturity, I knew when I went home they were going to act like nothing happened. Because to them, once they let their rage out, then the problem's solved, I guess. At this point, I did not need any of their validation, and I did not need them to acknowledge that anything happened because at this point I was done. I was not interested in trying to resolve anything. But I knew returning home was not going to be safe possibly, so I always had emergency contacts. I had friends checking in on me, and I never parked my car in the driveway. Because remember, the night that I escaped, I was parked in the driveway. What if this time my dad tries to block me in because he knew what I did last time to leave? So, safety tip. If you were blessed to have a car like I was, never park your car in the driveway where you could be blocked in. I would park always maybe 2-3 blocks away. Anyway, when I returned home, my mom acted like I didn't exist. And I was like, thank God, finally some peace. And my dad would try to make annoying small talk with me and I would humor it because again, I was done and I was just trying to play the game enough so I could lay low. Fast forward 3 weeks, I'm safe. My mom still is not acknowledging my existence, which is great. And my apartment is finally ready to move in. The day I go pick up my keys is also the day that I went to go buy a new mattress. Because I was not going to tell them I'm moving out unless I had a bed ready. Because I couldn't risk them going into another narcissistic rage and I don't have a place to sleep. Now the way that I would gather enough of my things to move out is, like I said, I was still in NP school. Every day that I would leave for either work or school, I was putting in my things into that backpack. So like my important documents, enough clothes. I just accepted that the things that would require actual moving from my room just had to stay. Because at this point, living on a mattress in my new apartment was enough. So after a few days of moving out very quietly, I told my parents as I was going out the door that, yeah, I got a new apartment. It's time for me to move out. And of course, my mom was throwing a tantrum about what will people say. And of course, my parents were calling me deceitful and whatnot. But I just figured, okay, then I'm deceitful. After what they did, adding one more insult on the list isn't gonna hurt me. But despite this, I still had some hope that things would get better. Because there's a lot of people that say that, things improved with their parents after they moved out. Because, space, time, and distance makes a lot of relationships better. But no, things just got worse. Remember when I said in the first video during my mom's narcissistic rage, my dad stood up for me for once? He backtracked on that so fast. He told me that I was remembering things wrong from that night. He told me that it wasn't my mom that threw the chair at me, it was him. I just remember it wrong. And of course I snapped at him. But remember, as the scapegoat, my opinion doesn't have much value to him. He's only there to play good cop, bad cop for the interests of my mother. A couple weeks later, it was Ramadan. And of course, during religious holidays, feelings of family obligation are heightened. I came home to see that my parents got a brand new dining table and chairs from Macy's. Because remember, the chair from the old dining table, my mom broke it in her narcissistic rage. Because she threw it at me. My parents, who always use finances to tell me that they couldn't afford me to move out, finally were able to afford this $2,000 dining set. And you know what my dad told me? Now you don't have any evidence, Neda.
My husband lied about the reasoning for his tattoo, and he was having an affair. A year and a half ago, my husband got a tattoo. I don't have a problem with tattoos or anything like that, but he had never gotten one before, or even talked about getting one. He said he started thinking about it because one of his sisters married a man who had several tattoos. It made him realize he wanted one. He ended up getting a lily tattooed on the left side of his chest. I didn't really like it, but I didn't comment because he is free to do what he wants with his body. A little over a year after he got the lily done, he went back and had some ivy added around it. I used to go to certain work events and parties with him because it was normal to go. He started telling me I couldn't because of the pandemic, which made sense a few years ago, but things began opening back up and events were more normal. He finally relented and brought me to one. I met one of his colleagues. She works in the same department as him and they have the same title, so they work together a lot. Her name is Lily. My husband swore it was a coincidence. I had tried to ignore my feelings about him suddenly wanting a tattoo, but he eventually admitted they have been having an affair for the last 2 years. I was so shocked. I was not even thinking about the ivy, but my husband said that Lily had a baby she named Ivy, and he got the tattoo a few months after the birth. He begged me not to get a divorce, but I can't forgive this. We have to be separated for a year before we get divorced. Our daughter is turning 18 next month. There will be no child support ordered for either of us to pay by the time we are divorced. The divorce should not be complicated. We both work, so the attorney I consulted said there will not be spousal support ordered for either of us, and our assets will be divided. A part of me is still in shock. He wants to go to counseling, but I can't. We've been married for 19 years, and I let him convince me my feelings about his tattoo were wrong. I never thought I would be 43 and getting a divorce, but here I am.
If you're still posting in real time, let me give you a story time that might change that. All started when I was in high school. I used to have a part-time job, which was at a fast food place. I was there for a while already, so they basically had me training new employees and whatnot. I'm just like super nice to the new employees. Like, you don't expect people to know everything when they're like barely starting their job, Specific person that was new to the job, so obviously I had to train him. The person was one of those like Pokemon type of guy, like the quiet glasses, that type of vibe. It's a message request on Instagram. I get a message request. I don't know how this person found me. My username, if you look on my Instagram, my username is very like, I don't feel like you could find me right away. And this was before I had my full name on my bio, right? It was him. I just didn't reply. I just would read the message, wouldn't reply. And it went on like that. It was literally like a list of messages of like, hey, what are you doing? Why don't you answer me? Like obsessive behavior, kind of. Not taking it serious and not taking into consideration my safety because I work with this person. Just kind of like oblivious to the whole situation because I don't know, I just didn't really care for it. Back into work a random day. I am on my 15-minute break and I'm sitting at one of the tables in the restaurant. And said person comes up to me and starts yelling at me. Talking about, why don't you answer my Instagram DMs? Like, well, I'm talking to you and you're just ignoring me. Telling me that I basically led him on by being nice to him. That it was my fault, that I made him like me and this and that, right? So at this point, I'm like, okay, why the fuck are you yelling at me right now? Like, I never gave you any signs that I liked you back. I ignored your messages on purpose because I'm not interested. And he was like, well, you think you could just be nice and talk to me and look at me the way that you look at me and not think that I'm not gonna feel some type of way? And I'm like, I actually just looked at him and I was like, you're insane. A coworker overheard, they told management, and management took him off my shift. So we weren't allowed to work together anymore. And amigas, and the moral of the story is don't post in real time because you never know who's watching and what they're capable of.
So I work as a veterinary receptionist, and that job doesn't seem like, it doesn't seem like that much. But believe me, I get pushed to my limits. Last night we had this elderly couple come in. They're in their 70s. The man is 75 because he told me he was 75. The last appointment of the day, we're just like, get him in, get him out. The deal. You want to leave. Their bill ends up coming to like $300, let's say. They only have like $170 to pay. Our business does not take like payment agreements. That's not an option really. They forced our hand in this case, so we had to do a payment agreement. They were like, the man was like, we'll come in tomorrow morning. Or I'll come in tomorrow morning, the man, and we'll pay the balance. And I was like, okay, let's get it on paper. And I gave him the paper, he signed the agreement, and the shit was done. Next day rolls along. Come 4:30 that day, I still have not heard a peep out of nobody. At 4:30, I call the wife because the wife's phone number is on the account. So I call the wife. I'm like, hey, haven't heard from you guys. We still have this balance. What's we gonna do about it? She's like, my husband was supposed to come in that morning. He left the house. You were on his list of things to do, to go stop by your place and pay the bill. And he left at the house at like 8:30. And I said, well, we have not heard from your husband, so I don't know where he is. And she's like, I don't know where he is either. So we're both like, So she's like, let me call you back. Let me try to call him. So I'm like, you better do that. She hangs up. I hang up. I'm like, Let's try not to overthink right now. Let's try not to overthink. Let's not overthink. Because my anxiety is already at peak. And this is not good for my anxiety. We hang up. I go about my merry way doing my job. A couple hours later, it's like 5:15. She calls back. My fellow receptionist answers. And she's like, she's saying, I'm telling her, I have not heard from my husband. If you hear from him or if he stops by, you need to have him call me because I can't get a hold of him. So we're both like, that's not good. But like, what can we do about it? What are we gonna do about it? We don't know. Clock out time comes. It's time to leave. It's time to get out this joint. I exiting my merry way out the back door. I see a vehicle parked in the back where no one ever parks. And it's a specific vehicle type that is very specific and easy to remember. I look at the car. I do a double take. I'm like, that car looks familiar. Guess what? So last night, rewind again, everyone abandoned me. I was the last person in the building, and I was checking them out, and they were like, we need help to put our dog in the car. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll do it. Because no one else is here, so I'll do it. I'll help you out to your car. I do it. I take him out to the car. It wasn't that big of a deal. It was fine. Put the dog in the car, and I left on my merry way. I remember the type of car that they drove because it's very specific. So then, come today, I'm leaving. I'm like, look at the car, and I'm like, that's his car. That's his car. Why is his car here? why is his car here when he was supposed to be here this morning? I'm starting to panic because I'm like, Mans is missing. Mans is gone. Where is he? So I'm like, now I feel like it's my responsibility because I'm the only person on earth that knows that his car is here and I know who drives the car. I start to panic, call the owner of the practice, and because we just left. It was like 20 minutes after we left. I call him, and he's like, you know what? We did see some ambulances and fire trucks, and this man collapsed in the back in front of the orthodontist office because we have an orthodontist next door, and the man collapsed in front of their porch, and he left his car running. So we went and turned off his car, and yeah, he just collapsed. And there was ambulances everywhere. And I was like, bitch, please, you could have told me this morning because I knew who the fuck it was. And how does the wife not fucking know that he did what? I'm like, doctor, you need to call the wife to tell her what's going on, because I'm like, if she's been all day worrying about her husband and she don't know that he's in the hospital, what? He's like, okay, I'll call her. And I'm like, you better call her. I'm over here like having a heart attack. Oh my God. Okay, I just had to get it off my chest. But that's what happened today. And I just pray this man's okay. I pray this man's okay because I just pray he's okay.
I slept with my best friend's husband on their wedding day. Story time. I have a best friend who we'll call Amy. This girl is like my sister. I love and care about her so much. But there is just one small problem. I am absolutely in love with her husband. Actually really, really complicated. So circling back to when I first met Amy, this was about 10 years ago, I also met Steve. And Steve was actually my friend first. And I went and told Amy all about this guy that I'd met who I really, really liked. He said I really want to get to know him more. So I decided to invite Steve to the movies with us one day. And by the end of the night, Amy had made a move on him. And they ended up kissing in the cinema, sat next to me. So when the film was done, Steve went his way and me and Amy got in the car together. She said that as we weren't dating, she thought it was just fair game. And I knew that at this moment I would have to distance myself from both of them. And obviously Amy started dating Steve. So a year later, things started to change between me and Steve. Me and Steve found each other alone together. Steve actually ended up telling me that I was the one he had always wanted. He told me that he'd gotten really, really excited when I invited him to the movies. Because Amy was the one that made a move on him, he thought that I had set it up for my best friend. And I was like, no, that's absolutely crazy. I absolutely really liked you as well. That's why I invited you. It changed the overall chemistry of our relationship. But we never ever acted on it. Fast forward 10 years later. We were all in the same hotel, but we're all getting ready in different rooms. So all the boys went to one room, all the girls went to another. Amy ended up sending me to the boys' room because she needed to get a charger out of Steve's bag. When I got there, Steve opened the door. I was like, I'm so sorry for barging in on the lab time. He was like, no, it's not a problem. So I got into the room and I realised that none of the other guys were there. And then I felt a hand on my waist. He was like, I just can't keep myself away from you. I can't help but think it should be you that I marry. Now listen, don't judge me. After 10 years of liking Steve, there was no urges I was fighting off. 10 years. And I was like, well, they're not married yet, so it's fair game. It was really good. Quick, but really good. I had to get back to the girls' room. And now I'm so glad that even though it was on their wedding day, we had that moment together. So does that make me a terrible person?
I want to kick out my brother and his family after they've been horrible house guests. My brother, Ellis, recently got a job in my city that required an immediate start. He didn't have the time or money to find a place on such short notice, and his partner, Taylor, just had a baby 7 months ago, so he didn't want to leave her alone. So he asked if he could stay at my place for a couple months to get situated. Ellis is a responsible guy who doesn't take advantage of people, so I felt okay saying yes. Ellis, Taylor, their 7-month-old baby, and Taylor's daughter all moved in. Before they came, I made it clear that I would not tolerate them doing any sleep training or cry it out stuff with the baby. If the baby cries, you need to make an immediate and reasonable effort to soothe him. The other rule was that Taylor was responsible for any damage her daughter did to the house. You would think this would be obvious, but we've had previous incidents. The final rule was neither I nor my husband would be doing any childcare. I'm a stay-at-home mom to my own daughter, as well as having a side business. And my husband works very hard. Just because we're at home does not mean we're available to provide childcare. I thought it went without saying, and they said they would be responsible for themselves in all other ways. They accepted all of the conditions and moved in. It took 2 weeks to go to shit. There were times I'd have to get up in the night to wake up Taylor and Ellis to get the baby. Taylor's daughter also has not adjusted well to the move and is constantly playing sick to avoid going to school. Then, because she's not really sick, she spends the day causing havoc. Taylor has been bugging me to help her with the kids despite agreeing that she wouldn't. She's also been expecting that she and the kids would be cooked and cleaned for. So it was 2 weeks until I was getting annoyed and a further 2 weeks of me being on edge. What tipped it over was earlier this week. I was picking my daughter up early from school and going out, and Taylor asked me to take her daughter with me. She said she was drowning in things to do and the baby was fussing and she needed a break. I said no, Taylor swore at me, and I just left. When we got back a few hours later, the first thing I hear is the baby crying. I go into the nursery, no Taylor. Her daughter is sitting on the couch watching TV and crying, no Taylor. My kitchen is a mess. No Taylor. I frantically searched the whole house to find Taylor locked in the closet. She said that she couldn't take it and needed a break. I call Ellis and tell him to get his ass home. I sat them down and said that they had to go. I said I would chip in for a hotel, but I can't do this anymore. Ellis thinks that I'm being an a-hole and going back on the deal. But he and Taylor haven't held up their end. I do feel bad because I don't want to stress Ellis out with his new job, but I'm going crazy. I hate being in my own home. Am I in the wrong for putting my foot down?